Hi, this is the quick version of Frustrated Mickey. And this is what he'll look like when we're done. So Frustrated Mickey is going to start out somewhat similar to a regular 3/4 Mickey. And if you think about, if we kind of look at some of the things that you can do with the 3/4 Mickey, you can see that his ears can extend out, and his eyes can kind of look up, and the expression can come down. So by tilting and stretching things a little bit, you can get different expressions in Mickey's face. And so we're going to do that a little bit with 3/4 Mickey. So as with all the Mickey heads, we start with a circle about half the size of the paper. Make sure that we've got room for his ears. So again, it's going to be about half the size of the paper. The guidelines, if you'll look, the guideline is going to start about maybe 1/4 of the way between the edge and the center of the guide circle. It's going to start perhaps 1/4 to 1/3 of the way from the top of the head to the center. And vertically, the vertical guideline is going to end about 1/4 to the left of the center of the circle. And the horizontal guideline is going to start about 1/3 of the way from the center of the circle to the top of his head. It's going to finish about 1/3 of the way down toward the bottom of the circle. So that's your guidelines there. His snout, and if you can see, the line should end up in this kind of a direction. So you can see that that's perpendicular to the vertical guideline. You can see that it comes out here, and it's going to finish a little bit behind that vertical guideline. His nose is kind of a triangular shape. Okay, and at the top of the nose, you can see it comes just a little bit above that horizontal guideline, and there's a significant overlap. His ears, as you can see, they're kind of pointing out to, they would actually intersect further out. They're kind of coming together and squished a little bit. They're squished in these directions, in as if his ears are kind of being pulled back a little bit, and there's a little bit of overlap. Okay, and the top ear intersects a little bit behind the center of his head. The bottom ear attaches almost just a little bit above the center of his head. So I'll give you a second to draw that. All right, so now you want to pay attention, and we're going to look at some marks on the head that we're going to do. We've got one mark on the vertical guideline, so about halfway up from the horizontal guideline to the top of his head, or to the intersection of the vertical guideline in the head. So that mark here. We're going to have another mark that we're going to make, which is about halfway from along the horizontal guideline, if you imagine it being a ball, and it's going to be halfway. That's going to be the main mask mark. And there's going to be 2 more marks that we're going to make. If we go halfway from the mark we just made, the mask mark, to the back of his head, we've got a mark, and then again halfway. So we've got basically 1/4, 1/2, and then the horizontal mark. So those marks will help us to draw the mask. And so now we can see that mask we're going to now pay attention to the mask. Okay, the peak of the mask is going to be halfway from the vertical guideline to the edge. Now the edge, if you'll see, the edge actually intersects with the horizontal guideline, not at the mark we made, but just a little bit further in. Okay, so there's going to be a slight curvature in at the end as we draw the mask, and of course there's this loop down. Okay, and you can see it's close to being a vertical here. So that's the shape of the mask that we're going to make. And then the mask is going to form his cheek. You can see it comes just up a little bit above the horizontal guideline. And it's going to come back to this final guideline. That's where the edge of it's going to go. And it's going to intersect. It's going to join neatly into the circle. And almost imagine that it's coming in and it's going to connect up with the rest of his snout. So kind of get that curvature so that it will connect up with his snout. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, so I'll give you a second to do that while I clean up the lines. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw these brows, his eyebrow, and so you can see that one of them is just following the top of the mask. It's going to be inside of the vertical guideline, and another one is going to start just about halfway from the intersection of the vertical guideline and the bottom of his mask. So it's just going to come out a little bit and curve back in. Okay. All right. The next thing that we're going to do is his eye, and his eye is going to come up about twice the height of that mark that we made from the horizontal guideline. We're going to come up about 2 times, and that's the top of it. And it's the thickness of it is about half. It comes right to the middle of this mask, really. So we're going to make that oval shape. And then he's looking up, so we're going to put his pupil in that way. And then it's kind of a wink. So his wink is going to come, again, fill up about half the space that's there. So that's his eyes. And next we're going to do the mouth. The mouth has an S-curve. It's going to start with a little hook here, and then it curves one way and then curves back the other. So it's kind of, they call it an S-curve. If you can kind of see this, I'm going to exaggerate it, and you see this S kind of shape. And he's got this corner of his mouth kind of frowning a little bit. Okay. And then his lip at the bottom, a little kind of lip there. And it connects, it almost intersects right at the bottom of the circle and kind of goes towards the edge of his mouth right there. Now we're going to draw his body. And what we're going to start with is we're going to start with just a curve that's almost like his spine. And it's going to start basically where his mask would have intersected the line, the snout. That's where it's going to start. And that's the, if you will, that's kind of the center of his head. So his spine, you know, it needs to come in the center of the head because his head needs to be well balanced. And it's going to curve out, and the curvature, if you can see, it goes about as the middle where that eye is. That's where it's going to finish. And it's going to come about the size of the snout. That's how far it's going to come down. So we just curve out a little bit. Okay. Now that spine is going to form the basis of how we're going to do all the other curves. We've got his right shoulder. It's going to start just a little bit below where the vertical guideline comes and hits the bottom of the circle. You want to come basically up to where that cheek is, and we come and just make a loop, and it's going to follow. It needs to follow the same curvature. All the things are having the same curvature right there. And once you've drawn his shoulder, then you can draw his arm. So you can, it again follows the curvature of all these other lines. The last thing that we're going to draw here is the other side of his body. We don't show his left arm. We just have a little line that comes down. It's a little bit smaller on his left side than it is on his right side. Okay, a little bit smaller. It's just a line that curves down, and then you've got his pants that curve up. So since they curve up, it's as if his body is tilting away from you a little bit. That upward curvature gives the appearance that his body is tilting away from you. Okay, so now we can draw his lines. Now you'll notice that some of these lines are gray. If you look up here, you can see that some of the lines are gray and some of them are black. And that's because the mask is all black, and so if you didn't use a gray color, you would miss a lot of the details. So for example, right in this area right here, we would miss the character of this eyebrow if it wasn't in a gray kind of tone. The same thing as you would miss all of this here and this part here, the overlap that gives depth to the picture. We would miss this a little bit here, and so it would, this idea of his kind of a furrowed brow would not show up. Same thing here. So all the overlaps we would miss. Now, on the ear, we're not showing that, you could if you want to. That's up to you. And we'll show you now when we color it in, you can see how those gray lines give you that depth. So if you're going to color it, that's something you should take in mind, keep in mind. If you're using pencil, of course you can do the lines, and you don't have to actually color exactly to the edge. And that's Frustrated Mickey.